My own daughter looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, we sold the house, and the money's gone." In that moment, I realized everything I had built, everything I had trusted had been thrown away for her husband's addiction. And then, as if that betrayal wasn't enough, they turned to me and asked if they could move in. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from all over the world. Your comments create a community where storytelling thrives, and we're so grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and prepare for a journey that will keep you hooked from start to finish. Let's get started. The first cold edge of autumn slides down from the Flatirons the way a careful hand draws a straight line. I'm up before the neighborhood, kettle humming, the coffee maker ticking like a metronome on the counter. The house wakes in low, reliable sounds. A vent sighs. The old clock in the hall clears its throat. The pine boards ease as the night lets them go. I set my mug on the coaster Caroline embroidered years ago, blue thread, tight stitches, corners dead square, and line its rim with the grain of the table. Little alignments matter, they always have. On the bookshelf, red binders hold tax returns. Blue binders keep property records. Green binders carry family matters. I pull each an inch forward, checking labels with the same quiet care I once gave to flow of funds charts at IRS criminal investigation. The muscle memory never really left. You learn to trust the ink more than the mouth, to notice round numbers where there shouldn't be round numbers, to ask why 3 cash withdrawals land on consecutive Fridays. Retirement didn't erase those instincts, it only trimmed the urgency. I log yesterday's utilities in a narrow-ruled ledger, date in the left margin, amount anchored right, notes need and spare. When the columns reconcile, an inner knot loosens. Order is a kind of kindness I give myself. Caroline's absence hums in the spaces the morning doesn't fill. Her quilt rides the back of the couch, a bright map of tiny squares. Her recipe card, stained at the corner, marks the banana bread page. The house keeps the shape of her hands. Grief, which once arrived like weather, now moves like ritual. I speak to her in my head when I lock the deadbolt, when I set the porch light, when I fold the dish towel, just so. She used to say, with a smile that made boundaries sound like blessings, that kindness needs edges to stand upright. I keep that rule the way a firefighter keeps a plan for egress. Memorized, tested, ready. Out on the sidewalk, the air tastes like metal and apples. Harold Briggs, retired from the high school, sweeps pine needles off his drive in patient strokes. We trade a nod, the veteran salute of men who have done their decades. Across the street, Denise Alvarez shoulders bakery boxes into her hatchback, laughter already in her breath. She's the type who brings a pie when a stranger lingers at your fence too long. Harold helped me mount the video doorbell after a wave of porch thefts. We're not nosy here, just attentive. Quiet eyes, open hands, a neighborhood net that holds without squeezing. I spend an hour in the garage at the bench, tuning a small hand plane until it whispers. Wood curls and light ribbon piling like drifted snow. The rhythm steadies me. Under the bench sits a fireproof lockbox with the originals of things that would bruise if handled carelessly. The deed, Caroline's will, my health proxies, and a promissory note my daughter Sarah signed 18 months ago when a small venture of hers needed a rescue rope. I don't open the box. Knowing it's there is enough. Documents are the bones in a body of trust. They let it stand when feeling goes wobbly. Sarah was bright as a match and just as stubborn when she was little. Wanted to lace her own boots, wanted to ride her bike to the end of the block alone, and then farther. In her 20s, she ran on independence, taking jobs that sounded like experiments until one stuck. She married Mark Ellison, a man who sells confidence the way some people sell cars. Shine first, price later. I kept my counsel and my porch light on. The promise I made to Sarah was plain. If you need help, ask before the fire spreads. I'm better at early alarms than late rescues. That loan, $200,000 drafted by my attorney friend Linda Cho, notarized in black ink that refuses to blur, was supposed to begin paying back 6 months after disbursement. It didn't. I sent 2 nudges, courteous, dated, archived. The ledger bears the line, "My life carried on." I told myself that love is patient. Caroline would have reminded me that patience carries an invoice if you want it to be love and not enablement. I set that thought on the mental shelf with the others and let the weeks simple themselves into chores. By late afternoon, the sky lifts clean and high, the mountains cutting a crisp profile like careful handwriting. I refill the mug and catch my reflection in the window, older around the mouth, shoulders still set square. Habit draws a coaster under the cup. Habit squares it with the table's grain. I leave the phone face down because retirement lets you choose your interruptions. The house rests in a hush that feels like a held breath before a conductor's downbeat. Somewhere 2 blocks over, a dog remarks on a squirrel. Somewhere closer, a cyclist's chain sings as it passes the corner. The phone breaks the quiet with the exact ring I assigned to Sarah years ago so I would never miss it. Unknown numbers fall to voicemail. Her name hooks me on the first tone. I don't brace for catastrophe. I brace for the small heaviness of being necessary. "Dad, can you talk?" she asks. The line is steady, but her voice runs thin like it's stretched over something she hopes I won't see through. "I can talk," I say. The percentage of my day that belongs to me narrows without complaint. I step to the window and watch a gust tilt the aspen leaves so their paler sides flash. She fills the air with assurances I didn't request. "We're okay. This is good news. We made a smart move." Those phrases are soft padding around hard corners. In interviews, I learned to mark them, not for what they say, but for what they avoid. Then she lays the sentence down like a ledger entry that won't balance. "We sold the house." The room tilts a degree. I set the mug down because glass rings don't stand out. I stand because height sometimes persuades the body it still has control. Outside, the world continues in its ordinary grammar. Tires on pavement, a distant laugh, the neighborhood's breath slow and unconcerned. Inside, an old reflex wakes like a trained dog at the scent of smoke. "Tell me from the beginning," I say. It's not suspicion, it's procedure. I walk 2 steps to the key hook by the pantry and touch the small brass key that opens the fireproof box under the bench. I don't take it down. I don't need to. Knowing what can be proved, if needed, is a kind of calm. On the wall, Caroline's photo catches the angle of late sun, and her eyes seem to remember something I am only now recalling, that we can be both gentle and exacting, that we can hold love steady without letting it spill all over the floor. The call is still live. The numbers haven't surfaced. The story has only cleared its throat. I watch the light move a little across the hardwood and feel the house lean in, listening with me, as if the beams themselves know what I have always known, that what comes next will ask my order to stand up and be more than tidy. If you're still watching and can feel the weight of this father's ordinary life before it shatters, comment number 1, so I know you're with me. Now, let's step into chapter 2. Sarah stayed on the line as if the phone itself could steady her. She led with cushions instead of facts, piling soft words the way you'd pad a box before shipping something fragile. "We're okay. It's actually good news," she said, each phrase like gauze. I didn't answer with comfort. I answered with process. Years in rooms with men who sold stories taught me that the number belongs first. "Tell me the number," I said, and waited through the tight little breath that followed. "We sold the house," she said, and then, because I had asked for a number and not a headline, she added 850. She didn't say thousand. She didn't have to. I wrote 850,000 on the corner of a legal pad and drew a small box around it, the way I used to mark key entries on a flow sheet. The pen slid easily. My hand did not shake. The house didn't creak. Facts, when stripped of excuse, have a clean sound. She moved to the why in a circling way, avoiding the words and reaching for their outskirts. Treatment, she said. Relapses, she said. Keeping things afloat. Bridge places, old stuff he thought he'd cleared. I let the silence keep shape so the words would land. What she meant finally was simple. Most of the money had already gone to Mark's addiction and the fallout that follows addiction like a long shadow. Facilities with glossy brochures, short-term rentals that charged desperation rates, debts he had promised were behind him but were not. I heard her trying to stack the mess into something that would look like a plan if you squinted. Then came the ask, soft as a hand on a door that hasn't been knocked on yet. We just need to stay with you for a little while, Dad. A few months temporary is a word people use when they don't have an end date. In my world, undefined ends are risk, not strategy. I wrote ask, move in under the box and let the ink dry a second. There was a rustle, a clunk that sounded like a cup into a car's plastic holder, and another voice entered, bright and practiced. Rick, Mark said, using my name the way salespeople use your first name to make the pitch feel clubby. The house is big. This is what families do. He framed their sale as genius timing, the spending as investing in recovery, the chaos as reset. Semantics tidy as a showroom floor, math that refused to balance. I kept my tone in the band between gentle and steel. Sarah, I said, because my conversation is with my daughter, 18 months ago, you signed a promissory note for $200,000, notarized by Linda. Payments to begin at month 6. To date, 0 I didn't accuse. I read, good ledgers need neither scorn nor apology. They need clarity. On the line, air thinned. Paper has a way of sobering rooms. Mark came back, pushing cheer into the shape of pressure. He called the note seed money, called paperwork awkward, leaned into we're family and you don't need it. Need, I have found, is a bad road to drive down in a family. Obligation is the road with lines. It's an obligation, I said, and left the sentence standing like a posted speed limit. Sarah's voice bent between loyalty and fatigue. She told me it wouldn't be long. He was getting better. They had no choice. This was the smart reset. They just needed a month or two. I remembered the girl who wouldn't let me tie her skates because she was determined to learn the knot. I heard the caregiver under the pitch, exhausted and ashamed of being exhausted. No, I said, and let the word be simple. Not tonight, not as a reflex to the size of their crisis, not without terms, timelines, and controls I set. From now on, I added, speak through Linda. It wasn't punishment, it was protocol. When hearts are inflamed, paper keeps the house from burning. The brightness in Mark's tone cracked. You'll regret this, he said, hard and clean. She's your daughter. I wrote the sentence down exactly as spoken, the way I used to fix threats to paper at the end of interviews. Sarah tried to smooth the air between us with a quick apology and a promise to call Linda in the morning. I didn't salvage the moment with warmth I didn't feel. We ended without theatrics. The line clicked to quiet. I opened the desk drawer and slid the phone in long enough to airplane the recording to the cloud. Timestamps matter if memories get contested. In the garage, I bent to the fireproof lockbox and set it on the bench, not to open it yet, only to feel the weight and remember what weight is for. The key lay on its hook by the pantry. I took it down, turned it in my fingers, and put it on the small metal tray by the front door where I would not forget it. Procedure lowers blood pressure better than pills. On the printer, a clean copy of the note came out with my sticky flags marking principal interest, and the default clause Sarah and Linda had both initialed. I stacked it on the desk with a fresh legal pad and wrote, counsel, Linda at the top. The room smelled like paper and toner and coffee cooling. It smelled like work that has to be done. At the mantel, Caroline's picture met the last light of the day. She was laughing at something I'd said when we weren't yet old. I heard her sentence again, the one she carried like a North Star. Kindness needs boundaries. My corollary has grown sharper with age. Boundaries need paperwork. Love, if it doesn't want to collapse under its own weight, needs lumber and nails. Through the front window, I watched Harold angle his trash bin to the curb with the same tidy habit he brought to grading papers. Denise passed in her hatchback, a wave quick as a whisk. Nothing in the street announced crisis. Still, I felt the quiet net that neighborhoods weave. Not intrusive, not dramatic, but ready to remember if tomorrow asked for memory. I checked the doorbell camera's battery and angle, toggled the porch light once, slid the deadbolts through their receivers, and listened to them seat. I wasn't staging for a fight. I was tidying a threshold. At the end of the night, I opened the ledger, dated the line, and wrote in my small, exact hand, Sarah called, sale, 850, ask, move in. Response, no. Counsel, Linda. I closed the book and set the pen parallel to its spine. The house settled around me, beams easing, floor warm underfoot. Outside, tires whispered on pavement and didn't turn down my drive. Inside, the policy I had written in ink waited to be tested by weather I could already smell on the wind. If you're still watching and sense the first cracks forming in what looked like stability, drop a number 2 below to let me know you caught it. Now let's move forward to Chapter 3. Mid-morning brings the kind of sun that makes the Flatirons look newly minted. I'm in the hall when the video doorbell chimes, and a second later, tires grind my gravel in a long, impatient exhale. A faded Dodge minivan noses into the drive, its suspension complaining under plastic totes, duffel bags, and a lampshade riding bare like a crown. I slip the small brass key from the tray into my pocket without looking. That was the plan last night. Have what matters within reach. Let everything else be deliberate. Mark slides the side door back with a hollow clack and announces arrival as if a lease had been signed in the air. He plants a sneaker on the curb like he's taking a hill. Sarah steps around from the passenger side, clutching a carton marked in black marker wedding albums, her fingers whitening along the edges. The porch camera pings again. I open the storm door a measured span and set my palm against the main door. Boundaries aren't a shout, they're a posture. I ask them to step back onto the porch. My voice aims for the tone I used in interviews when the first story was too smooth. I state that I did not consent to a move-in, that all communications run through Linda, that entry or storage on the premises isn't permitted. The words sit square, unadorned, like bricks laid level. Mark's smile is all showroom. He calls the stay temporary, calls the house too big for one person, drops family like a skeleton key. He uses my first name with the practiced friendliness of a closer. While he talks, I watch micro choices. Where he places his feet, how quickly his eyes move over the door hardware, the angle of his shoulders to the threshold. Salesmanship is an energy before it's a sentence. I remind Sarah of the note, $200,000, notarized, payments to begin at month 6, 18 months behind. I don't lean on the pronoun you, I let the paper carry its own weight. She absorbs the reminder like a body takes a wave, a small bend and then a bracing. Mark's jaw tightens a quarter turn. Silence has different flavors. This one tastes like impatience. I nudge the conversation to the porch table where the camera mic catches voices cleanly. Inside, I set a thermos on the counter and hear the quick shuffle of sneakers as Mark angles for the door again. His hand grazes my shoulder, my palm stays firm. He reaches, knocks the thermos, and a sheet of black coffee runs down the cabinets in dark, fast rivulets. Sarah flinches. I mark the moment with a thumb tap on the doorbell app to drop a bookmark at the exact second the liquid hits the floor. Not everything is a crime. Some things are patterns that need timestamps. Across the street, Harold pauses mid-sweep, the broom head cocked like a question mark as he takes in the scene. Denise steps from her hatchback with a covered pie and that face neighborhood women wear when they intend to help without embarrassing anyone. They don't speak, they don't have to. The presence is a perimeter. Mark's brightness dulls. He gives me a line polished to a threat's soft edge, the kind men use when they want to leave a bruise without leaving a mark. He says I'll change my mind, that I'll come asking them to return. I repeat his phrasing flat, the way you hold up a mirror. He shrugs it off with an airy hand, but I see the flare in his nostrils and the set of the mouth that says he's keeping score. Later, I will write his sentence down verbatim. Paper prefers verbs to impressions. Sarah tries to reframe the moment as a misunderstanding, asks for a week with no strings, just until they find the next place. She leans on the word until it bends. I keep my voice in the space between kind and clear. I offer a list, a motel that's safe and quiet, a contact at a program Linda trusts, a sliding scale counselor 2 bus lines from where they are. Compassion scales better when it doesn't live under your roof. I make the no trespass point plain. Unauthorized entry, a return with movers, attempts to store items here, those will be treated as trespass. If harassment continues, I'll seek a protective order. I don't add temperature to the lines. The law sounds better when it isn't shouted. I let the camera hear the latch travel through both deadbolts when I close, a mechanical period at the end of a sentence. Inside, I squat with a rag and watch coffee map the cabinet fronts before it beads and drips. I photograph the splash pattern and the knocked thermos because pictures solve arguments that words prolong. I log a time block in the ledger, arrival, phrases, neighbors present, bookmark set. Then I type a factual summary to Linda with photo attachments and the doorbell clip cued, subject line, porch encounter, evidence preserved. I keep the paragraphs as clean as the counters will be in 2 minutes. Through the front window, I see Mark slam the minivan door harder than the hinge deserves. Sarah tucks the wedding albums back into a tote and wipes the corner with the back of her sleeve, a motion that looks older than she is. Denise sets the pie on my steps and walks away before I can open the door to thank her. Harold meets my eyes and gives a nod so small it might be mistaken for a muscle twitch. A witness doesn't need to be loud, he needs to be sure. The landline rings, unknown numbers wait, banks go first. A fraud analyst asked me to confirm a 90-day bridge loan application listing me as co-signer. A scan of my signature rides the file. I say no, once, clean. I request a freeze, the document hash, the IP stamp, the submission time, and the branch routing trail. The analyst is professional enough to be grateful for specificity. We agree on follow-ups like people arranging a delivery window, but we both know the package on this one is a different sort of thing. I draft an affidavit of non-authorization and print it before the ink is dry on my notes. I schedule a branch visit for the afternoon, lock my credit, email Linda to expect the packet, and open a fresh folder on my encrypted drive labeled with a name I do not enjoy typing. Fraud. Dawson case. Inside it, I create subfolders like a spine: bank, doorbell, witness, counsel. Order is a calm you can make with your hands. I plate Denise's pie and eat 2 bites standing, because sugar steadies some mornings better than philosophy. I add a single line to the ledger: minivan arrival, boundary held, witnesses present, bank fraud flag opened, and cap the pin. The house exhales. The door is closed and will stay closed. The next move won't be at the threshold. It will travel the routes I know best: paper, timestamp, affidavit, court. The driveway slowly empties of the sound of other people's urgency. and the quiet that remains is the kind you trust. If you're still watching and felt the sting of that first betrayal hit home, type number 3 in the comments so I know you're following closely. Now let's continue into Chapter 4. The morning after the driveway incident, the house seemed to hold its breath a little longer. I brewed coffee, this time careful not to leave the thermos near the edge of the counter, and opened the ledger on my desk. The inked line from yesterday, minivan arrival, boundary held, witnesses present, bank fraud flag, looked small against the wide ruled paper. I scanned the photos I had taken of the coffee spill, clipped the doorbell footage, and saved everything into folders I labeled with dates. I've always trusted order more than luck. Before the sun reached the blinds, I placed the affidavit of non-authorization I had signed into an outgoing sleeve, ready for the bank. By 9, I had locked all 3 credit bureau files, a routine that felt as natural as setting a deadbolt. I picked up the phone and called Linda Cho. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and unhurried. I read her the facts as if I were giving testimony. Timestamps, the words Mark used, Sarah's exact phrasing of the ask, the fraud analyst's call, the presence of Harold and Denise. No adjectives, no speculation. She told me to bring the original promissory note, my contact log, printed photos, the video clip link, and the bank's email with the hash and IP submission time. She cleared a late morning slot. I marked it in the ledger and underlined it twice. Her conference room was as orderly as I expected. Pads squared at each chair, pins aligned like compass needles. We began with the note. Principal $200,000, 7% interest. Payments due 6 months after disbursement. Default acceleration after 90 days. Current status 18 months unpaid. Linda drafted a demand letter while I sat across from her. 10 days to cure the default in full or legal action would follow. Certified mail and email service, both for record. The wording was cold and clean. Debt doesn't need drama. She laid out a no trespass and harassment notice to accompany the demand letter. If Mark set foot on the property again, it would be trespass. If he escalated, we would file for a protective order. She gave me a single sentence to use if they showed up. All communication is through counsel. You are not permitted on this property. I memorized it. Words lose power when improvised in anger. They gain power when repeated without heat. We turned to the bank matter. The plan was clear. Step 1, confirm the freeze. Step 2, obtain the full application packet, including the forged signature and metadata. Step 3, file a police incident report. Step 4, complete the FTC affidavit. Step 5, place a fraud alert on my credit. Step 6, collect all chain of custody correspondence. She suggested I begin building a flow of funds timeline for Sarah and Mark's past year to anticipate defenses. My hand twitched toward the pen even before she finished the sentence. Mapping movement of money is the one language I still speak fluently. Back at home, I created the architecture. Folders divided into legal, fraud, media, and witness. Each held subfolders labeled with dates and initials. I exported a PDF of my contact log, calls, words, timestamps, and saved it in 3 locations. My neighborhood net tightened quietly. Harold walked over with a broom still in his hand, said he had seen everything from the curb, and would sign a statement if needed. Denise left a sticky note on the empty pie tin. Happy to write what I saw. I thanked them both, briefly, careful not to color their memory. Witnesses work best uncoached. I replaced the cylinder in the front deadbolt and tested the video doorbell recording at 3 distances. I set the porch light to a timer so the house would never look unoccupied. Beside the phone, I taped a card with the non-emergency police number and Linda's scripted line. Procedures beat panic every time. On my desk, I began a source and use chart for the $850,000 from the house sale, sketching where Sarah said it had gone, treatment, bridge housing, debts. The round number withdrawals and same-day transfers glared at me from memory, even before I had the bank statements. Pressure payments leave prints. Linda emailed the demand letter as a PDF. The language left no wiggle. Principal, interest, cure date, payment instructions to escrow, prohibition on property access. A certified mail tracking number followed. I entered it in the ledger, cross-referenced with today's date, and flagged the cure deadline on my wall calendar. Then I wrote a short email to Sarah copying Linda. Motel information, a treatment resource, sliding scale counseling, no negotiation, no invitation, only alternatives that did not include my front door. The bank branch was brisk. I signed their fraud forms, received a printed acknowledgement of the freeze, and requested a certified copy of the application packet once it was ready. The analyst nodded at my specificity. He understood I wanted a record trail not open to interpretation. From there, I drove to the police station, filed a non-emergency identity fraud report, and left with a report number I immediately forwarded to both Linda and the bank. Paper first, feelings later. At home, I slid the copy of the promissory note under a brass paperweight Caroline once bought at a flea market. I remembered her voice, kindness needs edges, and added my own reminder, edges need ink. The house felt steadier with that thought lodged in its beams. Evening light reached the mantel where her photo still caught the gold edges of day. I closed the ledger after writing one more line. Demand served, no trespass issued, fraud file opened, witnesses noted. The machine had started to move, and once in motion, it would carry further than voices raised at a porch. My job was only to keep the ink straight and the edges sharp. If you're still watching and saw how every attempt to fix things only made the conflict worse, leave a number 4 below to show you're with me. Now, let's push ahead to Chapter 5. The day begins with paper. Linda forwards the certified mail receipt along with the read confirmation. The green tracking bar glows complete. I print both, date stamp the corner, and slide the pages under Caroline's brass paperweight. 10 days to cure the default. The room feels quieter once a clock starts. Even silence has measure when a deadline runs beneath it. Within minutes, my phone vibrates. Mark first, then Sarah. I let his call pass to voicemail and answer hers. Her voice is raw at the edges, apology braided to justification, the way a rope carries 2 strands at once. I keep my answers on rails. I restate the note's terms, the cure date, the single channel for contact. She asks if we can talk face to face. I tell her evenly that all communication goes through Linda, procedure, not punishment. We hang up with no false softening. 2 voicemails from Mark land fast. The first is syrup over gravel. We can do a plan. The kind of pitch that asks a problem to admire itself. The second is clipped and hot. That paper means nothing. A sentence that shrinks as soon as it meets ink. I save both into the media/voicemail folder, transcribe key phrases with timestamps, and do not reply. Words preserved lose none of their temperature later. Early afternoon and engine idles at the curb. The minivan again, sun whitening the cracked clear coat along its hood. Mark steps out alone. Sarah stays in the passenger seat, chin tucked, eyes down. He doesn't step onto my property. He lifts his chin and calls it from the sidewalk, pitching to the street as much as to me. We just need a month. The doorbell camera hums awake. I open to the chain and stand in the rectangle of shade, letting the microphone do its quiet work. I deliver Linda's sentence in a steady baritone that carries without force. All communication is through counsel. You are not permitted on this property. He tries to make the sentence tilt toward compassion, or at least toward negotiation. I repeat it once, exactly, each word fitting the next like teeth on a gear. I keep the door half latched. The porch light clicks on, habit more than signal, and the lens above it glints. He moves through a predictable arc, wounded, then indignant, then something colder. He floats the phrase, "make this ugly," then brightens into a public relations grin and threatens to let everyone know what kind of father you are. I do not argue with a billboard. Your statements are being recorded, I say. His gaze flicks to the doorbell in a quick calculation. Whatever sentence was rising falls back down his throat. Across the street, Harold stands with his mail, stack squared, eyes level. Denise steps onto her porch and leans on the rail, phone low and dark but ready in her hand. A jogger slows and pulls one earbud out, balanced on the curb as if the whole block has shifted into the role of witness without having to discuss it. I do nothing to feed the theater. Stillness is a choice as active as any step forward. Mark addresses the air as much as me. He declares loudly that the $200,000 was a gift because that's what family does. I answer once in language that belongs to paper, not to feelings. The title and date of the promissory note, the interest clause, the acceleration on default. He interrupts before the clause ends. I stop speaking. Paper will have its voice where it belongs, on the record, under seal, before a judge. The porch is the wrong bench for that argument. He toes the property line a half step over, then back, testing whether the edge will blur if he smears it. I angle my phone so he can see the non-emergency number on the screen. I say nothing. The visual is a boundary stronger than any sentence I could add. He steps back to the sidewalk and kicks at a pebble with a force that wants a target. He spits his parting line, "You'll regret choosing paper over blood," and climbs into the driver's seat. The van lurches away, one cardboard box toppling in the rear window like a final gesture of disarray. I hold my breath until the engine's note dissolves at the corner. Then I lift my hand from the door as if it were a lever that needs releasing. Inside, I export the doorbell footage and title the file Sidewalk Escalation EMDD. I append transcripts of both voicemails, add the witness note, Harold with mail, Denise on porch, and email the packet to Linda with a single paragraph. Boundary held, no trespass, public threats recorded, no injury. I attach the certified mail receipt again for completeness and ask for next steps if the calls continue. The send chime is small and satisfying. Her reply arrives before the coffee cools. Create a harassment warning memo for the file. Keep the police report number at hand. She will schedule mediation and, in parallel, draft the court complaint to file if the cure date lapses. She asks for availability windows and confirms in bold that I am to decline all contact outside counsel. No exceptions. The steadiness in her language has its own gravity. On a different thread, the bank analyst writes to confirm the freeze and to estimate delivery of the application packet by Friday end of day. He promises chain of custody details to maintain admissibility. I reply with thanks and log the ETA in my flowchart. Loan app, packet expected Friday EOD. I add a small arrow toward a box labeled affidavit plus police report plus bank packet because drawings help me see process as terrain instead of a list. A text arrives from Sarah. I'm sorry for today. I'll talk to Linda. No asks, no bargaining. I take a screenshot and file it in witness/Sarah, then send a neutral response. Please coordinate with counsel. I don't append affection to a procedural message. Sympathy and structure can coexist, but they don't share a line. Dusk throws long panes of amber across the floor. I square the stack under Caroline's paperweight, the demand letter, the receipt, my notes, and run a fingertip along the cool brass. Her sentence, the one I keep taped inside my head, holds like framing timber. Kindness needs boundaries. I have learned the rest by practice. Boundaries need ink, dates, and service receipts. The calendar on the wall does its tidy work. The cure date waits, a dot of ink that pulls the eye the way a lighthouse pulls a line on water. Outside, porch lights wink on up and down the street, a string of low stars along the block. The house feels neither besieged nor triumphant. It feels trim, like a ship brought into the wind with just enough sail to move and not enough to capsize. What happens next will be quieter than a raised voice on a sidewalk. Filings, scheduling, signatures layered like leaves. I put the phone face down the way I used to put a file to bed when a day's work had been honestly done, and let the night take back the edges of the room. The morning's first certainty arrives by email. Linda has secured a mediation slot at a neutral suite downtown, a room with glass walls, beige carpet, and a thermostat that always seems slightly too cold. She attaches an agenda, scope, conduct, outcomes, and I print it on heavy paper, highlight the cure date, and slide it into the red binder I labeled settlement. The binder is full of small anchors, the original note in a clear sleeve, my contact log with timestamps and quotations, transcribed voicemails, doorbell clips cataloged by date, a flow of fun sketch with boxes and arrows that make messy spending look like terrain. I don't rehearse speeches. I rehearse documents. The elevator opens to a lobby that smells faintly of lemon and toner. In the conference room, a carafe sweats on a tray, tumblers lined like chess pawns. Across the table, Mark in a sport jacket too sharp for the hour, chin set, eyes bright the way sales rooms teach. Sarah in a dark sweater that makes her look smaller. A young attorney to Mark's right who keeps his phone face down but within reach. Linda sits beside me and lays out our stack with a mechanic's economy. We don't spread intimidation, we spread clarity. The mediator reads ground rules from a card with rounded corners. No interruptions. Counsel speaks. Offers in writing. I nod. Noise has an appetite. Rules starve it. Linda opens with facts that do not need adjectives. Principal $200,000, 7% interest. Payments due after month 6. 18 months delinquent. Acceleration clause triggered. Certified demand served with receipt attached. No trespass notice delivered. Public threats preserved. She slides the receipt across as if pushing a ruler to the edge of a drafting table. The paper makes a gentle sound. Opposite counsel tries a path I recognize. He calls it a misunderstanding. He says family money is often informal and points to the absence of harsh emails as if politeness were proof of gift. Then he pivots to capacity. They cannot pay in full. He proposes a plan with soft edges, small monthly sums, no enforcement, lots of hope. Fog wears a tie to court. It is still fog. Linda answers with an offer that ties money to responsibility. $75,000 into escrow within 30 days, the balance amortized over 24 months with automatic ACH to the same escrow, all contact through counsel, no residency at my home, and violations triggering immediate judgment without a second round of letters. Terms fit together like joinery. There is no space for swelling wood. She adds a stipulation against harassment with liquidated damages if violated, a ban on direct contact from Mark by any medium, and a clause that any appearance at my porch will be treated as trespass. The words are unheeded and specific. Anger can be clean on paper if you give it a hinge and a lock. Care without enablement follows in a rider. A 90-day inpatient program for Mark, 9 months outpatient, random testing, and a financial guardian to monitor distributions from escrow. Not me, not Sarah. A third party with no theater in their job. I watch Mark's jaw pulse. I have seen that muscle in interview rooms when a story meets a structure that doesn't bend. Linda opens a slim folder from my estate box, Caroline's papers resting inside like linen. She reads a paragraph summary first, then offers the clause itself, cleanly excerpted. Caroline's spendthrift trust withholds any distribution to Sarah if her spouse has an active substance use disorder or if their finances are commingled with an addicted spouse. Release follows only after 12 consecutive months of documented sobriety or a legal financial separation. The clause is old ink written for a day neither of us wanted. It has arrived right on time. Mark calls it manipulative and says something about grave-robbing lawyering. Linda does not lift her voice. She says the clause is enforceable and already in effect. The choice today is whether they walk with it or against it. I speak once, careful to keep my words on the side of explanation instead of edge. The trust is a fence, I say. It was built to keep storms from washing the house away. Sarah's eyes are on the paragraph, not on me. I take that as a small mercy. I slide my flow of funds sketch across the table. $850,000 at sale, then the rivers. Round number outflows that look like cash calls under pressure, same-day transfers from a rental to a facility fee, a cluster of payments around a so-called bridge apartment. No shaming, only arithmetic. Even the young lawyer stops glancing at his phone. A good diagram democratizes the room. It lets everyone disagree with the same picture. The mediator offers a reality check in a voice that could belong to a weather report. If we don't settle, filing on the note, a quick path to judgment given the paper, garnishment, liens, the harassment order if behavior recurs. The bank's fraud matter moving on its own track. Road A and Road B laid out where daylight can see them. I used to call this a choice between paths. A younger version of me would have called it an audit for the soul. Opposing counsel asks for 60 days to fund the upfront amount. Linda counters with 30. He asks to remove testing from the rider. Linda declines. He asks that Sarah, not Mark, be payer of record. Linda accepts with guardrails. Funds route through escrow. A financial guardian ad litem signs off. No commingling. The back and forth is almost gentle. When terms are good, they don't need to be loud. Sarah's voice enters the room like a small bird that has found an open window. If we comply, she asks, could there be some contact later? She doesn't look at Mark. She looks at the table. I tell her any contact would be narrow and scheduled after 6 months of clean compliance and only by invitation. A boundary is a door with a lock, not a wall. Doors can open, locks keep them honest. Linda places a thin envelope in the center. Inside is the term sheet, signable, and a clock. 48 hours to accept. If they sign, a stipulated judgment sits in escrow like ballast. If they decline or breach, the full complaint files on day 49. Calm paper makes choices visible. It also makes excuses smaller. We leave our copies, they carry theirs. In the elevator, the silence feels like a pressure suit. I breathe the way I learned to breathe before walking into a search. Slow and counted. Patience tied to paper is not passivity. It is a tool. Back home, I log the meeting in my ledger. Offer tendered, trust clause cited, rider attached, clock started. I place Carolyn's photo on the folder for a moment, palm on brass and glass, the gesture a small blessing I do not speak out loud. Evening takes the room in clean strokes. The calendar holds its dot where the 48 hours end. Outside, the mountains square their shoulders against the dark. Inside, a fence that Caroline drew years ago stands exactly where it needs to stand, and a path runs beside it for anyone willing to walk straight. The day begins with a clock instead of a sunrise. I write T-36 hours at the top of the ledger and reread the term sheet until each line becomes muscle memory. $75,000 to escrow within 30 days. The balance amortized over 24 months by automatic ACH. No residency at my home. No contact and no harassment stipulations. A treatment rider with inpatient first, outpatient next. Stipulated judgment drafted and held if they sign. I flag the acceptance deadline on the wall calendar in red and lay a manila folder labeled File on Day 49 beside the phone. Decisions feel less like weather when they have drawers. By mid-morning, the bank analyst's email lands with the application packet attached. The forged co-signature sits on the first page, familiar loops strained at the edges. Metadata shows an IP stamp, submission time, and branch routing that makes sense for the story I've been told. I save everything to /fraud/bank packet, draft a short addendum to my affidavit, and forward it to Linda with a note about chain of custody. The coolness of this thread steadies the heat of the other. The neighborhood does what neighborhoods do when asked for nothing and trusted with something. Harold arrives with a typed witness note, signed and dated, the edges neatly trimmed as if he graded it. Denise brings a brief statement on bakery letterhead, only the facts, no color. I scan both and file them under witness, then hand back the originals in clear sleeves. We don't rehearse the morning on my porch, we put it in ink and let it be. My phone buzzes with a text from Sarah. Can we talk? Just me? I reply with a single sentence, copying Linda as agreed. 10 minutes by phone, counsel looped. We set it for late afternoon. Boundaries, then kindness. That order has kept the day upright. When the call begins, her voice sounds sanded down. No performance, just fatigue that has learned how to talk. She tells me she read the term sheet twice, line by line. She doesn't ask to move in. She asks what compliance looks like in the ordinary hours. Who sends what where? Who checks? How the treatment proof flows to the guardian. I answer in pieces I can diagram. Escrow wiring to a restricted account. ACH set on fixed dates. Weekly documentation from the program to the financial guardian, not to me. No direct contact to my number, everything through counsel. She repeats the steps back to me, and for the first time in weeks, her voice lands on a surface that holds. Then she says the thing that does not fit anywhere soft. She pushed to sell the house fast, believing it would save Mark. In a relapse spiral before the sale closed, she took a short-term loan from a predatory outfit in Durham, the kind with fees that multiply in the dark. And she used my home address on one form, just once, to keep collectors from their door. I'm sorry, she says, the two words so small I almost miss them. I feel my chest tighten the way a beam tightens under load. I keep my voice level because level is what we have left. Using my address can drag third-party collectors to my porch, smear credit traces into the wrong file, and invite noise to the one place built for quiet. We need an address scrub and cease and desist letters now. I ask her to email PDFs, the contract, any texts, any voicemails. She agrees. I'll take the hit if we need Chapter 13, she adds, and I hear steel under the apology. I tell her I won't criminalize a panic decision if she fully discloses it and helps correct it. We'll route the predatory loan to Linda for a negotiated settlement if possible, or a consumer bankruptcy referral if necessary. Mercy with paperwork. That is the shape of mercy I can carry. While the call is still warm, I send Linda a summary with verbatim quotes and attachments. Immediate cease and desist to the lender, my address, an address purge through the bureaus and USPS, and a referral to a bankruptcy attorney we trust. 3 items, 3 checkboxes, 3 outcomes we can monitor. The send chime feels like a pulley taking part of the weight. An intake coordinator from a Charlotte inpatient program calls next, copied by Sarah, saying a bed will open on Tuesday. I ask for their documentation protocol, admission confirmation, weekly compliance notes routed to the escrow guardian, random test schedule with chain of custody. The coordinator doesn't blink at the specificity. People who live in process recognize their own. Linda forwards escrow wiring instructions in payer of record language that allows Sarah to fund without commingling. She includes a short list for a financial guardian ad litem. I pick the one with hospital billing in their background and agree to a kickoff call about monthly statements and missed payment triggers. Rails, then train. I write an auto reply for any text or call from Mark. Per counsel, All communication through attorney. Do not contact this number. I store it in drafts and create a one-tap forward to Linda and the harassment log. Scripts prevent improvisation from becoming escalation. Housekeeping follows the mess that Sarah made with her address. I submit USPS corrections, confirm the credit freezes, and tighten the doorbell's motion zone around the mailbox so any hand fishing where it shouldn't be becomes a file instead of a feeling. I add the lender's number to a filter that shunts their calls to a folder named with the exact statute Linda cited in her letter. I open a fresh page in the log for stray calls, time, number, verbatim, length. Sarah calls again before dusk. She reads a draft email that admits the address misuse in plain English and attaches the loan PDFs. She adds one sentence consenting to guardian oversight of all payments. I thank her for being specific, not for being sorry. Specifics move cases. Sorrow moves only the second hand. Harold stops by with a thermos of chili and a line that feels like it could have been carved on a fence post. A fence makes good neighbors because it tells the truth, he says, setting the thermos down. We eat standing at the counter, two men who like plans more than speeches. He asks whether I'll need him for anything else. Maybe later, I tell him, and he nods like a man clocking in for a shift he's proud to work. Linda's evening email arrives with measured reassurance. The cease and desist went out. The bureaus have the scrub request. The bankruptcy referral is en route. Good disclosures make good settlements, she writes. She adds that if the 48-hour window ends with a yes, she'll file a stipulated judgment in escrow. If no, the complaint leaves her outbox at 9:01 a.m. on day 49. Both paths ready, neither dramatic. I write the day's line in the ledger. Confession, predatory loan and address misuse, corrective actions launched, intake Tuesday, escrow rails set. I place Caroline's photo on the folder for a breath, not for sentiment, but as a reminder that kindness with edges is not cruelty. My home remains closed. My hand remains outstretched. Through paper. The house settles the way houses do when night wraps them. Small ticks in the joists, a sigh from the vent, the porch camera blinking its reassuring blink. The chili cools in the sink, the signed statements dry under brass, and the wind outside has the sound of weather traveling along rails we laid, not through the front door. The morning starts like an audit, not with dread, but with a list. I draw boxes in my ledger and label them cleanly. Term sheet signed, escrow wiring live, guardian engagement letter, treatment bed, cease and desist acknowledgement, address scrub harassment log. Checkpoints frame the day the way joists frame a floor. If each holds, the room holds. Linda's email lands first. The PDF carries two neat signatures. They made the window. The stipulated judgment sits in escrow, countersigned and ready. The cure clock on the $75,000 begins now. 30 days that will move slower than 30 ordinary days. I print, date stamp, slide it into a plastic sleeve, and file under legal settlement. Then I write the cure deadline in red on the wall calendar and on a sticky eye anchor under Caroline's brass paperweight. Ink becomes a kind of ballast. At 9, I meet the financial guardian ad litem by video. Calm face, hospital billing in her background, a vocabulary that prefers receipts to stories. Scope: receive escrow statements, verify ACH, flag misses in 24 hours. Cadence: monthly packets to counsel. Nothing to me unless a term wobbles. Limits: no discretionary releases, compliance only. I approve the engagement letter and store it under /legal/guardian, grateful for rails that are not my spine. The escrow officer sends wiring instructions and confirms Sarah as payer of record with no commingling. We run a $1 test transfer to verify the rails, then schedule ACH on the 1st of each month. time zone to avoid weekend trips. I request automatic delinquency notices to me and Linda if a payment fails. A system that tells the truth without waiting to be asked is a kindness to everyone involved. By late morning, the Charlotte facility emails a bed reservation, intake calendar, random test protocol, and a weekly compliance memo template addressed to the Guardian. I forward the packet to Linda and the Guardian, highlight the reporting cadence, and file the documents under treatment. I am careful not to become a recipient in that stream. My relationship with my daughter should not be a report lane. Noise drops another level when Linda forwards an acknowledgement from the predatory lender's compliance address. My home address is removed. All correspondence now runs through counsel. She attaches a draft settlement proposal and, failing that, referral notes for Chapter 13. I log the contact, note the statute she cited, and leave my spam filter on a tighter watch list for a month. The doorbell's mailbox zone can return to normal. The credit bureaus confirm the address purge and activate a 12-month fraud alert. USPS returns a correction receipt. I print both and tuck them into a sleeve labeled Address Hygiene, a phrase that satisfies something in me I can't entirely name. I rotate the front deadbolt pins, test the doorbell's backup battery, and clone the legal folders to an offline drive that slides into the fireproof box with a click I've liked since the first time I heard it. I activate the no-contact automation, an auto-reply for Mark's number that says, "Per counsel, all communication through attorney. Do not contact this number," and a filter that forwards any message from him to Linda and to a read-only harassment log. Friction removed, record preserved. I type a single line at the top of today's log page. No contact yet, hoping to leave it that way. On my walk, I thank Harold and Denise for their statements and tell them the matter is moving through paperwork now. I ask them to keep copies of what they gave me. We don't gossip the street, we maintain a witness net, quiet hands ready to steady a ladder if the wind kicks up. Back at the desk, I finished the source and use timeline for the $850,000. Sale date, proceeds, the rivers after, facility fees, bridge rents, round number outflows that glow like heat on a map. I leave gaps where bank statements will belong. A good diagram admits it doesn't know everything yet. I export the PDF to Linda with a note that it is a contingency document only, useful if compliance ever stumbles. Linda calls to explain the stipulated judgment one more time. If they miss a material term, payment, testing, no contact, the document files without another argument, turning leverage into outcome in a single motion. I write, "Sword and scabbard, ready if needed," on a sticky and slide it under brass. Calm leverage is still leverage. Sarah emails to confirm the $1 test cleared, attaches the intake packing list, and asks if she should copy me on weekly compliance memos. I tell her to send them to the Guardian and counsel only. Boundaries protect both sides. She replies understood without a flower of apology. It's the most adult 2 syllables I've read from her in months. The afternoon holds. No minivan idles at the curb, no sidewalk speeches, no buzzing phone. I write "no contact today" in the log and feel how victory often looks, like a blank line surrounded by paperwork. Denise appears at dusk with a paper bag, sourdough still warm, and a note. For calm mornings, I thank her at the step and don't explain anything. Not every kindness needs a narrative. Some simply need a door that opens and closes on time. Before I shut down the office, I run a last pass over the checklist. Settlement signed. Check. Escrow rails, live. Guardian engaged. Intake, confirmed. Lender scrubbed. Addresses fixed. Automation in place. Log, quiet. I write the day's entry in the ledger with the quickness of habit and the care of a man signing for a delivery that matters. Then I lift Caroline's photo an inch to dust under the frame and set it back where the light can find it. kindness with edges, she used to say. Today, the edges held without cutting anyone. I slide the red binder beside blue and green and draw them forward an inch, the way I always do when I want to tell myself I've put the day away in good order. The house exhale is small but audible, ducts settling, a joist easing, and the porch camera blinks its single patient blink. Tomorrow can bring whatever judgment it chooses. Tonight, the framework stands, rails locked, clocks ticking, guardians awake. The home feels like itself again, not because nothing happened, but because everything that needed paper now has it. Day 3 after signatures, the morning begins with results instead of promises. I open the banking app to a green check. The $1 test we sent to prove the rails is settled. I capture a screenshot, print a confirmation, and file it under legal escrow receipts with today's date stamped in the upper right corner. On day 5, the first amortized ACH arrives, a quiet line of digits that looks boring in exactly the right way. I pencil a small square beside the red calendar dot that marks the 30-day window for the $75,000. Wins should be recorded at the same granularity as mistakes. The Guardian's memo lands with the economy I hope for. 1 page, 3 bullet points, no padding. ACH verified. Next draft dates listed. Alert thresholds reiterated in bold. She copies Linda, not me, on anything from the facility. I do not open the forwards that pass through my inbox. Received, I reply, and let the omission do the work of a boundary. A good system keeps you from seeing what you don't need to see. Charlotte confirms admission at 9:10 a.m. on Tuesday, attaches the random test schedule, and includes a privacy notice I've read a dozen times in other contexts. I forward the packet to Linda and the Guardian and drop copies into treatment intake. The program offers a family orientation. I decline and reference our no-contact terms. The refusal is not a lack of care. It's the shape of care that doesn't collapse the fence. From the other track, Linda reports the address purge is complete. The lender's compliance team confirms they will route everything to counsel and not to my door. She lays out a settlement ladder, discount for early payment. Chapter 13, fallback if the ladder snaps. I log the ladder like a piece of scaffolding drawn in pencil. The mailbox camera zone returns to normal. Quiet is data, and this week the data is quiet. The bank's fraud review closes cleanly. Application withdrawn, notation added to my profile. Fraud flag retained for 6 months to harden the gate. The police incident sits in the city system as a number rather than a narrative, and the analyst thanks me for organization that shortened his afternoon. I opt for no public complaint. Process, not punishment, is the ground I stand on best. Outside, the neighborhood resumes the choreography of a street that knows itself. Harold waves from behind a rake, the leaves gathering in obedient piles along his curb. Denise slips a card into my mailbox that reads only, "Bread Fridays now," with a small drawn heart that looks more like a leaf if you don't squint. We exchange nothing about the case. Normal is the currency after a storm. We spend it carefully. Midweek, the rails show what they're made of. A minor ACH hiccup triggers an auto alert. Insufficient funds flagged at 6:02 a.m. 2 hours later, a make-a-good transfer posts, and the Guardian logs resolve same day with a link to the receipt. I write in the ledger, "System caught it, fix on record," and feel the small release that comes when confidence moves from people to procedure without losing compassion. A narrow channel opens from Sarah, procedural and clean. She emails a packing list update for intake, confirms testing attendance, and CCs Linda and the Guardian. There is no apology paragraph, no plea to review. I acknowledge receipt with a single line and do not open the attached PDFs. The Guardian is the eye on that lane. The absence of persuasion feels like progress. Not everything respects automation. A stray text from Mark surfaces from a new number. You'll see we're trying. The auto reply fires instantly. Per counsel, all communication through attorney. Do not contact this number. And the message forwards to Linda and drops into the harassment log. No further attempts appear. Blank lines resume, and I find myself grateful for software that can keep a fence painted while I make coffee. Linda sends Sarah a plain language memo on the milestones in Caroline's Spendthrift Trust. 12 consecutive months of documented sobriety or a legal financial separation. There is nothing threatening in the tone. It reads like weather. These are the conditions under which this season changes. I do not add commentary. The fence explains itself. In the office, I archive the porch clips under a folder called Closed Encounters, with a README that lists timestamps, witnesses, and outcomes in a tidy grid. I clone the legal archive to an offline drive and slide it into the fireproof box. Paper that has done its work doesn't need to sit out on the counter like a trophy. It needs to be available and quiet. On the fence line, Harold mentions the side gate latch sticks and oils it without fanfare. Gates are for choosing, he says, testing the swing. Fences do the rest. I thank him and we talk about the late frost possibility, about whether the scrub jays have been noisier this year. The point is made without the ceremony of a lesson. Week 2 brings another memo from The Guardian, a CH number 2 scheduled, no delinquencies, treatment compliance noted as on track. Predatory Loan Counsel proposes a 30% haircut for early settlement. Sarah signals acceptance in a short email that carries the weight of a signature even before it receives one. I add progress documented to today's line and close the book for the afternoon. In the kitchen, the ache arrives as it does sometimes, unannounced and uninterested in being argued out of its seat. Love that holds a line can still ache. I rest my palm on Caroline's paperweight, not to petition her memory, but to borrow steadiness from an object that has done the same job every day it has existed. Keep the important from sliding. The house feels held, not hard. There is a difference. On the porch, evening is the color of tea. 2 robins work the lawn in a truce with the late sun. The doorbell blinks its patient blink, a metronome that marks nothing happening as exactly what's supposed to be happening. I leave Denise's bread to cool on the rack and write a single sentence in the ledger. Rails working, house steady, no contact today. Outcomes, not victory, are the closing chord. I draft, only in my head, the message I might send 6 months from now if compliance holds. An invitation to coffee, off-site, neutral ground, 1 hour, my treat. I hear the sentence I'll add about the kind of boundaries that make love possible, that keep a house a home rather than a refuge that someone can claim by knocking. I don't write it down. Promises live first in the behavior that earns them. When I switch off the office light, I align the red, blue, and green binders an inch forward and listen for the house to settle. The duck sighs. A joist ticks. The quiet is earned. Resolution isn't a cheer, it's a blueprint that stood up in wind. Tomorrow, the blueprint can become a lesson. If I can find words that hold what the paper held without adding weight, it does not need. Morning in Boulder sounds like a house remembering itself. The kettle hums, the clock takes its measured steps, the porch camera blinks once and rests. These were the same notes that opened the story, but they register differently now, less like sentries on a wall, more like instruments in a system that's working. I align the red, blue, and green binders an inch forward, set my mug on Caroline's stitched coaster, and open the ledger to today's page. The line I add is short. Systems held. I flip back over the months I've captured in ink, phone calls, doorstep noise, the fraud flag, the mediation clock, the 48-hour term sheet, signatures landing with the force of a second chance. The ledger is not a weapon. It's memory that doesn't raise its voice. It records behaviors, not grudges, outcomes, not wishes. Beneath the calm lines, the same truth repeats. What we document, we can endure. Status isn't a drum roll anymore. It's a checklist that stays checked. Escrow shows the first ACH received, a quiet confirmation that rails carry weight. The 30-day cure on the $75,000 has a red dot and a paper trail that will say whether the promise cleared the distance. Treatment is underway in Charlotte. The Guardian gets compliance memos, I do not. The predatory loan mess lives in counsel's inbox instead of my mailbox. My address is scrubbed clean and the ladder to settle is in negotiation. The bank's fraud application is withdrawn, my profile flagged for 6 months. The police incident number filed and dull as a nail in a beam. The no-contact automation hums along, and the harassment log is a string of blank days, the right kind of data. Normal has value again. Harold oils the side gate latch when it squeaks and the gate swings with a satisfying click. Denise times her bread for Fridays and leaves a bag on my step with a little leaf drawn on the note because she won't pretend it hearts. Neither of them asks about settlement terms or intake calendars. They don't need the story to do the job of being neighbors. They are the quiet perimeter every house prays for and too few get. I set Caroline's brass paperweight on the trust folder and speak our core line out loud, because saying it makes it true in the room. Kindness needs boundaries. Boundaries need ink. The spendthrift clause in her trust didn't reach from the grave to control our daughter. It drew a fence against a known storm and gave us a dry path to cross. In the worst hours, that clause felt cruel because it refused to confuse love with rescue. Now it reads like a relief map. Follow the high ground. Avoid the marsh. Something changed in me that didn't have to make a speech to prove it. I stopped rescuing by reflex. I started practicing procedural mercy, care routed through rails, compassion measured in compliance, not sentiment. Saying no hurt, and the hurting didn't mean the no was wrong. The boundary was not a wall, it was a hinge that let the door move only when conditions were met. I learned to be accountable to values instead of to guilt, and accountability has a quieter voice than guilt, but it holds longer. If I could press a single card into the hands of the men and women my age who write to me from their own storms, it would be simple and unpretty. Put agreements in writing even when love is warm. The warmth will pass and the paper will remain. Separate compassion from commingling. If you mix them, you lose both. Keep contact logs when your heart says you're being petty. The future version of you will thank you for timestamps. Learn a sentence you can say at the door without heat. All communication is through counsel. You are not permitted on this property. Teach your present, lonely self what your future, steadier self needs you to do. Sarah's road is narrow and real. The term sheet is not a theory. It is a calendar with teeth. The Guardian reads numbers without flinching. The escrow account makes deposits or it doesn't. The trust clause explains itself in plain daylight. 12 consecutive months of documented sobriety or a legal financial separation. Those aren't punishments. They are conditions that keep love from bleeding out where money should clot. A good fence doesn't hate what it keeps out. It protects what it surrounds. I've given myself permission to hold a dignified maybe. If 6 clean months pass, I will invite Sarah to coffee off-site, 1 hour, neutral ground, my treat. The door to my house will stay on its hinges, not as a verdict, but as a design choice. Trust returns by deposit, not apology. When we meet, if we meet, I will talk about the birds in the yard, the taste of Denise's Friday bread, and what it felt like to learn that the shape of care is not always the shape of comfort. No one in this story needs to be a villain. Addiction is brutal and boring in equal measure. It explains impulses without excusing harm. Mark is not a monster. He is a man whose disease turned him into a machine that runs on the shortest distance between need and money. Sarah is not a saint or a traitor. She's my daughter who confessed when it counted and now moves paperwork like a person who wants the storm to end. The rails, escrow, guardian, court-ready judgment, let us interact without tearing new holes. That is what mercy looks like with edges. The house itself became a teacher. Hinges over open doors, thresholds over ultimatums. When the frame is true and the hardware is right, the door can close without slamming and open without surrendering the whole room. I look at the deadbolts, the camera, the binders, the quiet, and I see a blueprint that held. I also see a man willing to hold it again tomorrow, not because he enjoys firmness, but because he has learned what leaks when he pretends he doesn't need it. I write one last line in the ledger. Peace by design, not luck. I set the pen parallel to the spine and sit in the ordinary light that comes through the kitchen window. The camera blinks once, untroubled. Somewhere on the block, a rake scrapes, then stops. In the refrigerator, a Friday loaf waits for morning. The house is mine the way a promise is yours when you keep it. That is the ending I can live with, and the beginning I can stand up to again if I have to. In the end, peace didn't arrive as a miracle. It arrived as a design. Not the roar of triumph, but the steady hush of things working the way they should. When storms test a life, what holds is rarely a speech or a promise. It's structure, clear lines, honest documents, clocks that keep their time, and doors that open only when the hinges are sound. Kindness means nothing without edges. Love stays love when it refuses to stand in for chaos. Accountability is not cruelty. It is the way dignity survives and trust finds its footing again. The lesson is simple and, in its own way, tender. Protect what you hope to share. Put grace in writing, not to trap anyone, but to free everyone from confusion. Let boundaries carry the weight that hearts cannot lift alone. Choose outcomes over outrage. Choose habits over drama. Choose the quiet proof of systems that outlast moods and the humble courage to say no when yes would only postpone harm. There is room for mercy, but it belongs on rails. Help that fuels recovery, not relapse. Support that respects distance, not erases it. A future worth having is built with small, repeated deposits of trust, of effort, of time. And sometimes the kindest door is the one that stays on its hinges, able to open, able to close, still yours to guard. If this story met you where you are, if it steadied your hand or clarified a line you needed to draw, thank you for sharing these minutes together. We'd love to hear your reflections. What boundary changed your life? What system over speech kept you safe? Share your thoughts in the comments and let others learn from your experience. If this resonated, please like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Your voice helps this community grow, and your presence keeps these lessons alive. Until the next story, take care and keep your doors on their hinges.